Hello, and welcome to another live stream with me, Scott Claus, your DJ here today. Trying to get some cool vibes going here. As always, if anybody is watching right now, I'd appreciate if you let me know if you can see and hear. There's nothing more embarrassing than going on and on, and nobody's getting all my wit and wisdom. So please feel free to say hello. Well, hello there. Hello, hello. Hey, Sherry. Hi, Frankie. Welcome. So tonight I'm going to be joined by my friend who sits in sometimes. This is, well, we haven't really decided what it is. I have no clue what it is, to be honest. Somebody said its name is Chloe, based on somebody out there who's got a cat who's very dear to us all. But I'm still, the verdict's still out. You can call it whatever you like. I don't know what it is, but thanks, Renato, for letting me know. Sound is okay. Purple dude, sure, or purple not dude. I don't know. I don't know what it is. It just showed up and it won't leave, and it likes to sit here and sit in while I'm doing stuff. So anyway, today I'm going to be talking about 2D animation. That's what we're talking about. Purpley. That's what we're talking about today is 2D animation. I am with CG Spectrum, which is an online school that does a lot of programs in different disciplines of animation, of CG graphics, computer generated graphics. So we're talking about modeling, rigging, concept design, character design, and one of the things that they do is animation, both CG and 2D, and I'm currently responsible for the 2D department. And so we teach a whole spectrum of classes on 2D. We have an introductory program and then a program we're rolling out pretty soon with cutouts, where you actually have a character that's been rigged for you, like you see on TV shows. And I talked about that, I think, last week a little bit, and I'll probably talk about it again soon. But today I'm going to be focusing more on just good old-fashioned, traditional, hand-drawn 2D stuff. Barney, I like that name. We should call it this thing Barney. All right, so unless anybody else has a better idea, I think Barney it's going to be for a while. And maybe Barney Chloe with a hyphen, I don't know, whatever. Anyway, so the way it works, if you've never joined us before, is I'm just going to kind of sit and draw and talk randomly about what I'm working on. But if you have any questions or concepts that you'd like me to talk about, if you have anything you want to discuss whatsoever, I have a lot of experience in 2D animation. I even have experience in CG animation, both character and creature. And I'm always willing to talk about whatever anybody has any thoughts about, including, but not limited to, how do I get a job? And how do I put my portfolio together? What's it like to interview? How do I get into the big studios? What's it like to work in those studios? So I'm always more than willing to talk about that stuff. And in fact, some people wish I'd maybe shut up about it. But if you have any comments about specific things, don't be shy. Go ahead and ask. Otherwise, I'm just going to continue to prattle on and on about what I'm working on. In this case, let's put our friend away and I will show you. What I'm working on is a scene I started 2 or 3 weeks ago. It's an old scene that I was working on way, way, way back when I first started in animation, and I'm pulling it out to finish it off finally. I'm actually going to finish this thing one way or another. And part of that is that I've been correcting it as I go and doing things that I've learned since I did this many, many moons ago. But just to explain a little bit, it's based on a character from a Bakshi film called Wizards. Ralph Bakshi is a famous kind of independent animator. A lot of us animation geeks from way back, we big Ralph Bakshi fans, and I was particularly moved by this film. I just thought it was great when I was a kid, probably because I was a kid, and it's a little on the risque side. But it was different. It was just a little bit different. Looking back, it's maybe not the most beautifully animated piece, but it's, for what it is, it's actually, I think it's pretty well done. And a lot of, like I said, geeks like me, my age, we all grew up with it. And anyway, so I thought, well, what if you took this character and you kind of made it a little more fluid, a little more Disney-ish? So anyway, here's another image from the film. So it's just bouncy. It's got the Mickey Mouse from Sorcerer's Apprentice look with the pointy hat, the stars on it and stuff, and then the long floppy sleeves, and then the gloves. And so I thought, well, what if I took that and kind of combined the irreverent backshiness of it with the big nose and big bare feet and stuff that's kind of funny, and then mixed it with something a little more classical, which is the Mickey Mouse Sorcerer's Apprentice thing. Anyway, so those were the character designs that I used. And this isn't actually Avatar from Bakshi. This is actually my own interpretation of it whenever I did it, which is a million years ago. And so I started out with an animation that looked like this. So this was, just to play it, how it looked when I first did it. The idea was it was a wizard's magic village house, somewhere out in the middle of the woods, and he's trying to do magic. And I think the idea was the fairy was kind of getting in the way, or being impish and making fun of him, or something like that. I don't know. I'm going a different direction with it, but I just like this little move. I just thought that this move with the swoopy arms was a good example of, and a quick example of how you can incorporate overlap and follow through into your scene. But having said that, I thought that the scene could be improved. So in an earlier session, live stream, I was working on it and I came up with this. So it's basically the same thing, but a little bit more fleshed out. I've added a little more overlap and follow through to the hat, to the gloves, definitely to the beard, and even to the base of the gown that he's wearing. So I'm going to probably continue on and fuss with this and try to continue making it more kind of in the style that I would like it to be, while I'm, like I said, just yammering away about any old thing that you guys are interested in talking about. So feel free to prompt at any time, write in a chat, no matter what platform you're on. I should be able to see it. And just let me know if there's anything you specifically are curious about. But other than that, again, thank you for joining tonight. I hope that you enjoy this, and you're going to hear me talking there just a second. Hope you enjoy this, and like I said, just feel free at any time to chime in and let me know if you got something that you want to discuss or know more about. You can also talk to each other. Sometimes in these streams, people make friends and start chatting. And so I'm just going to get started here and draw a little bit. And while I'm doing that, I will also mention that one of the most valuable ways to get a job that I found to get a job in the industry is to be friendly and to know people and to network. And networking usually ends up being a case where you are friends with other people who like to do what you like to do. And as such, you talk to each other. And when something comes up, when a job comes up, for example, you say, hey, you know what? I heard that there's this job across town and I feel like you'd be perfect for it. And if you want to apply for it, I happen to know that they've got this number set up, or whatever. But it's, kind of friends helping friends is how I've gotten most of the jobs I've gotten. And it's what I recommend people do if they're interested in having a career in the business, is make lots and lots of friends and be friendly, and recommend things when other people are available that would be good for a gig, and then they will hopefully recommend you when it's your turn, and if you're a nice person. And that's schmoozing, that's networking, and it's also just doing what you love to do. When we were all in the midst of the 2D animation boom that happened in the 90s, what happened was we would just talk to each other. And one of the reasons some of us ended up making, listen to that, some people ended up making decent salaries was because we would talk to each other and say, hey, I'm making this. And then another person would go, you are? Because I'm only making this much. Well, why don't you go in and talk to them and say, hey, I would like to make this much too. That person over there is making it. So just being friendly and talking to one another and creating an artist community, that was how we ended up with a really unique situation in the 90s, where a lot of us were or not a lot of it, but people were making very healthy salaries. And the reason it went away is they caught on to us. I shouldn't say that, but it's the truth. And so, but we, you know, we were all friends with each other and we all would talk. And as a result, we ended up creating a really healthy place for people to work, financially anyway. So what I'm doing right now is I'm just fixing up one of the feed. I didn't really like how it just kind of fell into place. I'm still not thrilled with it. I still think it probably could rest a little. I'm just not sure if it matters that much if I add some slow out to it. So right now it just comes to a complete stop, and that's generally speaking not a good idea. But if you look at the big picture of the entire character, you probably wouldn't even notice that when it's moving around. But then again, you might. So I'm going to go ahead and just do a couple more quick little in-betweens and make sure that this thing doesn't come to an abrupt stop. It'll also keep the timing nice so that it doesn't stay on the same timing that everything else in the scene is doing. What you don't want to have is you don't want to have everything in your scene coming to a stop at the same place, which you're going to see at the end. I'm going to work on that a little bit tonight, do some overlap and follow through on there so that you see that the character actually doesn't completely come to a stop ever. When you're working on a scene, the tendency for, especially for new students, is to do a scene that's complete within the time frame of your timeline. So it started here, it ended there, and you have a character go ta-da, and then they stop. And that isn't really very realistic, because in a movie or a show or a game or something, you're talking about something that's in a continuum. It's constantly in motion, and even if the characters stop and they go, okay, well, we'll think about that, there's still something you'll see. Check it out, prove me a liar, but you'll see something still is moving. The eyes or something is still kind of going on even after the characters stopped what they were doing for the scene. And so the reason for that is because they're cutting as if it's live action, and in live action people don't come to a complete stop, and also to cut it so that everything keeps moving. So if you're doing your own personal tests, it's okay not to have a character come to a complete stop. In fact, it's probably better. You don't really want them to kind of stop, go ta-da. You want to have it look as realistic as you can, and that part of that means keep the thing moving all the way up until the end of your timeline. And then, you know, if it doesn't look right, you can make a choice at that point to stop it. But what you'll tend to have, and I'm going to try and prove that today in just a minute, is you'll have something that looks like it's continuing to be fluid in motion, and you never have to have it come to a complete stop, which makes it look like it dies, which is what's happening at the end of the scene currently, as I'll share in just a minute. So there, now I've got the foot. It looks a little bit smoother. It's still not smooth. It's still kind of a little bit rat-a-tat. There's part of it's on threes, and I may go fix some of that another time. But at least it's not quite as abrupt as it was. You get a feeling that that foot rotates around. I'm not sure why. I don't think I would have done it that way. I think I would have kept his feet. Probably what he should do is he should lift his foot. Maybe I'll do that another time. I'll show you that. But for now, it's enough. His foot's just rotating. Compare that to this, and we'll see if it looks any different. The original, I mean, it looks about the same, but it's a little more fleshed out, a little smoother. That was the intent of these original roughs. I just didn't finish it off. I just did like 3 drawings. So now it's a little bit more smooth. And it, in theory, like I said, I probably will have him lift his foot up and put it down again. I really want to finish it off and make it look nice. And thank you, as you're a J. I know who you are, but I can't remember who you are. So I'll continue to call you as Jai. And I know I've met you before, but I cannot remember what your handle is. So I don't want to out you. Anyway, so, but yeah, so little things that I did. Like I said, I did the, I started doing the sleeves a little bit. I'm going to work on that some more because they need some love. So I'll finish those off, and then I'll finish off the back end of the scene. So right now I got some funky in-betweens. It doesn't, when the sleeves close like this, they've completely changed volume And it doesn't, you don't really see it when it's playing at speed, but it bothers me. So I'm going to finish that by way of warming up. I will say this, it's important to always warm up when you're drawing. You can't expect yourself to just suddenly start drawing and be genius every single time. When we would work, they kind of expected us to spend some time warming up and getting used to a character. And I remember learning some of the characters before we would even be on the film officially. And you know, we'd spend days, sometimes weeks, getting to know the character while we're on the clock. And they're paying us, I mean, and we haven't even started doing what we were being paid to do. And I always thought that that was pretty civil. I thought that was cool. It's like, no, get to know the character. You're going to be drawing it a lot. And so right from the start, you should know things about your character. And in 2D, at least, we would actually draw one character and get to know that character for the whole movie. And then by the time the film was over, we'd just be masters at that character. And I can still draw some of them. I'm not going to, because I don't want to screw it up. And plus, they're probably copyrighted. They're probably not supposed to. But I could, theoretically, I could draw some of them even today. Particularly, I think, Spirit, and then Frollo, the bad guy in Hunchback. Because Kathy Zielinski was so good at teaching us that character, and then we just drew it a lot, that I could do that one in my sleep. And it was not an easy character. That was a tough one. And so the fact that I could draw that character even, oh boy, got a little situation here where the hands have switched places. This will happen. This is something that mostly happens in a walk cycle, where you find that the right and the left arms have switched. So I'm going to fix that. But I got a question here. I always love it. So, okay, I heard of this. We got drawn by like individual animators in Lion King. Yeah, so they would always group you together. If one of your characters, well, hello, Alex, hi back. If you had characters that were sort of similar in theme and there wasn't a lot of footage, then they would combine characters. So some people would do like, oh, all the background characters, or someone would do the child. Well, I remember I started out on the young Moses. I didn't start out on young Moses and Prince of Egypt. I started out doing these three little girls, but they weren't in the film very much. And so when they were done, I moved on to the young Moses. Moses as a young man, because he spends most of the movie as an older man with beard and stuff. And so I don't know why they actually thought that that was a good match. Maybe it was just out of necessity, but they would do that, you know, economy and group people together. But when I was on Pocahontas, that's all I drew all day, all night. It was Pocahontas, and for a long time I could draw her in my sleep, but not so much anymore. She was really tough, and I was only on that film for a couple months, so I didn't get to know her like I did some of them. Miguel from El Dorado was a very difficult character to draw, and we had 3 different supervisors, 3 different animation leads, 3 different departments to draw because he was in the movie so much, and so that one was a real challenge, but it suited me perfectly. He was definitely drawn in a style that I'm very comfortable with, so I loved it. I thought that was one of my favorite films. So any tips on what make a character interesting in your animation movie or TV series? Oddly enough, visually appealing. It's one of the 12 principles. If you haven't looked at them lately, you should have them under your belt at some point so you can just rattle them off. I can't, and I teach it all the time. I mean, if I thought about it, I could, but one of the 12 principles is obviously appeal. And if you think about it, people talk about this all the time. Mickey Mouse, I so can't draw Mickey Mouse. It's been so long. But one of the things about Mickey Mouse is I do him my way. He always looks like one of my characters when I'm done with him. But one of the things that he was based on were these concentric circles that were placed in such a way that he really, really was friendly looking. And so when they show them to babies, and babies instantly kind of relate to this character. This is when I start definite. The eyes are really hard, and yeah, it's been too long. I'm going to embarrass myself. I don't want to do this anymore. Anyway, you get the idea. You can tell just from the outline. But you can see it was 3 circles, another circle for the nose. If I kept going, it'd be more circles for the eyes. If I'm looking at it, I can actually draw it okay, but I'm not going to pull it out and do Mickey right now. Again, I don't even think I'm allowed to copyright some. But appeal, what it makes an appealing character, what is interesting to look at. Look at things that you think are interesting and copy them. And I say that to people all the time. They're like, what? It's like, yeah, copy them. So in the case of something that's supposed to be cute and cuddly, think of plush toys. What are plush toys? They're soft, cute, cuddly. So look at them and try to replicate that. And that's where that comes from. Or look at babies. Babies or little children characters. One of the reasons they're appealing is because their head is most of their face, and then their the rest of the parts of their face are, I'm going to do this kind of Don Bluth style. I don't know, like for some reason I always gravitate to the Don Bluth thing, but their faces are, their eyes are really big. And now I'm making an evil baby. All right, so it's not so cute anymore. But their heads are really big, their eyes are really big, and they yeah, I can do better than that. And that's one of the reasons babies are cute in general. Let's do something a little bit cuter. Their babies are cute in general. Why? Well, you look at them, look at the anatomy of what makes a baby cute, and then all of a sudden you make a cute drawing out of it. And when you see cute baby animals, it's the same thing. They have big heads, big eyes. One of the reasons, like the Disney characters in Disney films are composed the way they are, big heads, big eyes, it's because it's more appealing. Chuck Jones was really a master at this. He would take the pupil of the eyes and he would just make that the entire eye. If you've ever seen like Cindy Lou Who from Grinch, or if you've seen like Chuck Jones cartoons, and then he always gave him these long eyelashes. Again, I can't draw his style. He was a master at it. But and then this part was all, the iris was huge. It filled up the whole thing, and they're just adorable. And that's one of the reasons. And then he'd make the noses really small by comparison. So it was all very scientific, but that was Chuck's specific style. I can't quite pull it off. I haven't done it in a long time. Something like that. But anyway, so it was all done. And yeah, Boss Baby. I know that's what it looked like. Sorry, but yeah, the Elmer Fudd. These were all designed in a very specific way to appeal to people who wanted to see something cute. And then by contrast, see if I can. Nah, I'm not even going to try and draw. But if you wanted to draw somebody who's got a little bit of a harsher feel to them, you're specifically trying to make something that's scary looking and ugly, and I don't know, I'm just making this up as I go along. But so everything has its own particular style. So look to the source. Look for something that's very specific that you like or think is well designed, and you'll see what it is that's appealing about it if you draw it. I used to draw characters over and over and over again when I was free, when I had some free time at Disney. And that's if I know how to do any of this at all anymore, it's for that, because I used to practice all the time. But yeah, just copy the things that you like the best, and learn how to draw them based on the things that you've copied from other people. And then you'll learn what makes things appealing. One of my favorite things was to draw Alice in Wonderland. I couldn't do it now if you paid me, but I used to draw her when I was at Disney and I had some free time. I was like, I will learn how to draw this character, and I was astounded at how hard it really was, and that people could actually, they could actually draw her day after day after day. So character design tips, the most important thing that I think is to keep in mind is construction. So whether you're doing a character that's face is nothing but a bucket with ears and eyes, or whether you're drawing, I can't draw her anymore, I used to practice her all the time, but Princess Daphne or something from, it's kind of based on Tinkerbell. Boy, it's been so long. But whether you're drawing something that's Disney style or that's a little more loose and cartoon style, that you got to construct it. So that's the main thing, is you got to construct it out of volumetric shapes. I always talk about Meg from Hercules, and how she was based on cups and, or what do you call them, pitchers and pillars from Greco-Roman art, and that was the construction of her design. But using shapes that already exist. So if I'm going to do flat one that's like, oh, it's kind of shaped like a cup, or Princess Daphne, she was, again, this is not even close to her. I can't do her anymore, draw her anymore. But what was based on a very specific design style that was based in the Disney thing of, oh, we draw a mask. And that's how I started to get better at drawing her, is you draw a mask around a sphere, and then you start attaching things to it. To be honest, if you want to learn how to do this stuff with and really play with fire, because again, I'm way out of practice at doing these styles, but Brandon Rymton, I think is his last name, he does concept art. Well, and his people in his department do concept art. They do streams like this one, and he creates characters and breaks them down. So yeah, it's a family art style from nice. And Alice, the bass actor for, they did so for Alice in Wonderland, they actually, this is one of my favorite stories. I met her. They had she was little then. I don't remember her name, but I know I remember, and she was really cool. And she was also the voice of Peter Pan, Wendy from Peter Pan, and she was British, and she actually had kind of a proper way about her if you look at the reference footage. And what they would often do with Disney films is they would use the reference, but they wouldn't draw over verbatim and rotoscope it. So rotoscoping is, I've got a character who's doing something, and then I just go through and I draw directly over them, and it's real loose and really, kind of scratchy, and then from that I go through and draw a line over the top of it and create my character or whatever that is, and then I'm copying the action exactly. I'm just applying a character look to it. It's the equivalent of motion capture, and I think people know what that is nowadays. So that's what rotoscoping is. And so they rotoscoped characters as a last resort at Disney. Well, they did it on Snow White. Snow White was rotoscoped because that was kind of the first time they'd ever done it. And they were sort of like, well, we've got this human character. She's really hard to draw. What do we do? So they said, well, why don't we just draw over the top of her? And other people had done it. I don't know who did it first, but the Fleischers had done it with the Gulliver film. And others had done it. Betty Boop, that's rotoscope. But if you've ever seen rotoscoping, you'll notice it has a really weird feel to it. If you look at Ralph Bakshi, speaking of which, his animated film of Lord of the Rings, that was all rotoscoped because there was no other way to do it. And so it has a really odd feel to it to me. And even as a kid, I was sort of like, that doesn't look quite right to me. That looks kind of strange. So Disney would use reference, but they wouldn't necessarily draw a one-for-one, frame-for-frame over the top of it. Sometimes they would. I think Cruella de Vil in 101 Dalmatians, pretty sure she was, at least in parts. Sometimes she was, sometimes she wasn't. But definitely Snow White was. Sleeping Beauty, they did a lot of rotoscoping. But they tried to apply an artistic angle to it and keep it nice animation and not just copy frame for frame, which is kind of what they did with Lord of the Rings. They had to add Hobbit faces to the characters, but you could tell it was Billy Barty, just the way the character moved in some cases. So is rotoscoping easier or harder than regular hand animating? Do you think it should be used? I think it's good for fast stuff. Just for the record, I mean, I've created my own CG animation and then rotoscoped it as a way to save some time, so I looked at reference and then worked out the animation with CG animation, which can sometimes be faster, and then use that as my reference. And it's like, oh, in this frame, the character is doing this. I did that in a stream earlier. I might bring it back at some point. So I don't know if it's easier to rotoscope. I think technically it is easier to trace something off, but then think about this. What do you do if in the rotoscope, draw this, if in the camera your character's hand looks like that? Because think about it, well, maybe not so much nowadays with high definition, frame rates and things like that. But in the past, at least, there would always come a frame that's, if I go like this with my hand, if I go like this with my hand, it's going to look blurry to you. It's moving too fast. The camera lens can't keep up with it. The frame rate can't keep up with it. Again, unless you're using like 60 frames a second or something. So what do you do with something like that when you're supposed to rotoscope it and put like Mickey's hand or something over the top of it? Do you draw every finger? Well, if you do that, it's not going to look like a blur. Do you go in there and smudge it? That might work. Sometimes it does, sometimes it doesn't. But you're going to have to make a choice. In the actual footage of whatever you rotoscoped, it was a smear based on the fact that the character was moving too fast for the camera frame rate to keep up. Now you've got to interpret that in art, and animation is not that forgiving when it comes to this sort of thing. It has to be more stylized. That's one of the reasons why it is more stylized, is because it doesn't look right when you play things perfectly at speed. In animation, if you just copy it one for one, it gets uncanny valley. It doesn't look quite right. So you can use rotoscoping as like a first pass maybe, or use it for reference, better still. But at a certain point, you got to actually animate the thing. And that's what I always tell people about the Hulk. That was the first film, I think that's the first and probably the main film that I used motion capture on. We were all required to use motion capture. And we ended up keyframing the film anyway, because it just didn't look right. It just wasn't working. And Andy Serkis can say whatever he wants. That's his interpretation of the apes. I've said this a million times. If anybody who comes in every week has heard me say this every week probably. Andy Serkis can say anything he wants, but it's animation that made the Planet of the Apes look good, made Gollum look good. It's animators who actually animated the thing. So I think it's good for reference. I think rotoscoping is good for first pass, but eventually you need to use what you know about animation, which is squash and stretch, timing, spacing, good design. That's a big one with rotoscoping. If you look at something and it looks like this, is that a good design? Well, that's what you're going to get if you trace off live action footage. And eventually you need to turn it into an actual character. So I think that all motion graphics are wonderful. I don't have a problem with any of it. I love it all. But certain things are more suited to what you're trying to accomplish than other things. So, well, I'm glad that Hercules is one of your top 5 animated films. It's one of the few that I can still really watch and enjoy, because I think it's just so fluffy and silly. It's pretty dated. We thought it would be at the time, and it is. But I still think it's fun. I think it's just a fluffy laugh fest, and it's one of the films that I worked on that I can actually go back and watch. Some of them not so much. Not even because I think it was so traumatized or it was so hard or whatever. It's just it's not my favorite material, and that's something that I talk to students about a lot. Is, well, what happens when you're working on something and it's not either in your style? I did a session not too long ago on drawing somebody else's style, but it's not your style, or it's just not something you're all that interested in. What do you do? And the answer is you do what they tell you and you get paid, and it's wonderful. There's nothing wrong with, just doing your job. Think about it. If you were doing another type of job, you would be required to do lots of things that you don't really enjoy doing. And in this case, you get to animate, and that's really cool. So, so that's you're drawing in another style. To be honest, Hercules was a really tough style. It was very difficult to draw. And even though I was working on Ken Duncan's character, and I totally love his style and can relate to it, and it's comfortable for me to draw in his style, it was a very designy film, and so everybody was having a rough time. Everybody was kind of challenged, but those characters moved really fast. You may notice that there's a lot of fast action, cartoony action in that film, and one of the reasons for that well, I don't know if it's the reason, but one of the nice things about that is that it made it easier to draw those characters because everything was moving so quickly. So that was kind of fun. So I'm just adding some overlap to the end of this. I'm basically just making it so that when his hands reach up, then the folds reach up a couple frames later. So the hands go up and then the folds go up. And that's how overlap and follow through works. It's always just something's a little bit behind, especially if it's something floppy, like the sleeves of a blousey cloak like he's wearing. Then once something reaches its peak that's driving it, then what's underneath it will follow a couple frames after that. So, did I see the new Croods movie trailer? No, I have not seen the new Croods movie trailer. Is it any good? It seemed like the first one, people really liked it. It seemed like that one was fun. But nope, I have not seen it. And I'm always curious to see how these things are going to be received. I think the Croods is what I would have worked on if I had continued. Well, no, that's not true. I think I was going to work on the B movie if I'd stayed at DreamWorks, but we parted ways and I did not work on that. And I think the Croods, it took a long time to get that one up and running anyway. It happened quite a while after I left, so I don't know a lot about it actually. I know people who worked on it, and seems like it was pretty fun. But yeah, I'm very curious to know what's going on at DreamWorks. I haven't talked to anybody who's there. A lot of my friends are no longer there, so I'm not really 100% sure what's going on over there. And I think they're kind of restructuring and thinking about what directions they're going to go in the future. And that's a really good time to get a job there because that means that they're on the verge of starting some new stuff, and you want to be always want to be at the beginning of something when a studio is actually getting started and everything's all fresh and new and they've got all these wonderful ideas. That's the best time to get in on a place. And DreamWorks, all the studios have had all these situations where they've been up and they've been down, and that's just the nature of the business, and it always will be. And but from the standpoint of an employee, from an artist standpoint, you want to make sure that you're getting in on something as it's getting started. That's usually the best time anyway. And what do I think about Disney's arrangement where all work done during a contract length for their movies or not belongs to them? That's a good question. I'm going to come back to that in a sec. So, yeah, cool. Resident Evil trailer. Nice. So yeah, that's a really good question from Alex. I'm going to answer that one because I think that's important. So what do you think about Disney's arrangement where all work done during contract length and movies or not belongs to them? What I think is that you just have to be careful. To be honest, Disney, they're not, well, Lion King, they're not technically in the business of stealing. They're looking to buy properties, and so they kind of don't want you to share anything with them because then you can turn around and claim, oh, they stole it from me and it was mine and they took it. So they really don't want to steal anything from you. All they're really doing when they say that is they're covering themselves, and they're going, well, we have to be sure and we have to just cover our bases. And so they say in their contracts, they say, well, if you do something while you're here, then odds are very highly possible that you were influenced by what you saw when you were at the studio, and then you're now going to turn around and try to make a profit off that. And believe it or not, I have seen people do it. While I was there, shortly after I left, I saw people who honestly thought, well, I'll just kind of cop this idea and maybe, share it or do my own thing with it. Or people who would go and talk to other studios and say, well, this is what we're working on and this is what we're doing. I did that innocently. I didn't know, oh, I probably shouldn't be telling, I think it was Warner Brothers, I was saying, oh, I'm working on this or that. And then they actually stopped me and said, oh, we don't want to hear about it. Don't tell us this stuff. But as far as my own projects, I worked on a lot of stuff at Disney, and while I was there, and they didn't even know about it, and they didn't need to because they don't care. They're not interested in that. They just didn't want me being influenced and then taking their ideas and running with them and calling them my own when I was there and I was influenced. But I mean, I wrote a book while I was there, and I think I was finishing my animation short or started another one or something. But I worked on stuff, and I just did it on my own time and didn't make a big fuss out of it. And then if you do that, you should be all right. But if you're going to run around and say, "Oh, I'm developing," there was this person who did a development with fish puns and was running around and telling everybody about it, and then they kind of clamped down on that and said, "No, that's not something that you probably want to do, is run around and tell people about this brilliant concept that you created. Just keep it to yourself." If Disney is having one of their gong shows, they will be more than happy to talk to you about your ideas. And DreamWorks actually paid us for our ideas a couple times. They'd say, "Hey, we're looking for ideas for this project or that. If you're interested, please come and talk to us." Or it was like a contest. They said, "Well, we were looking for Shrek sequel ideas," and so I turned one in. A bunch of people turned things in, and we got paid for it. They said, "Yeah, we're willing to pay you for your ideas, even if we don't use them." And I thought that was fair. That was pretty cool. So just wait for your moment, and it'll probably come. But in the meantime, if there's something that you have and you think it's worth something, just keep it to yourself. And I say this a lot too, with people on these streams. I say, if you're in the business, you think that you've got something, or you want to be somebody who comes up with ideas, when you get an opportunity to pitch, and they come up now and then, you should keep some ideas for yourself, some ideas that are kind of and then you should have a list of ideas that doesn't matter if anybody steals it. If you're really a creative person, you will come up with more ideas. And there is no one single idea that's just, "Oh, that's the greatest thing ever." Everything, my writing teacher used to say, everything's already been done by the Greeks and Romans anyway. So the best that you can do is put your own stamp on it. And that just means, you're going to take your original idea and you're going to turn it into something that's unique, just because you did it. But the idea of, "Oh, I'm going to come up with the most original idea in the entire world and everybody's going to pay me lots of money," even if it was the most brilliant idea in the world, probably nobody would recognize it because you don't have the clout to sell it just yet, if you're not famous or you're not out there doing it already. So I've seen plenty of people with brilliant ideas and nobody ever heard of them, and so the ideas didn't go anywhere. And then I've seen lots of, you probably have too, silly ideas, and because the person was somebody, then that idea got produced, or they had cash and they were willing to put cash on the line to do their dream project or something. So anyway, so keep a list of projects that you think are really, really, really good, and you want to keep them to yourself until the right time comes. And then there are projects in the middle that are pretty good, and you think you could sell them, but you've developed them, you put a lot of work into them, so you save it until you have an actual opportunity. And then there are ideas that you can just toss right and left and see if any of them land. And if you do that and just keep coming up with new ideas all the time, then you're probably already working as a story person or an idea person anyway, because people will get tired of you and then they'll finally hire you to do it. So anyway, that's my thought on pitching yourself. So you guys talking about some cool projects, and the nice thing that's happening right now is we've seemed to have gotten over that silly hump of, "Oh, well, there's 2D animation and then there's CG animation." Seems like now people are like, "I don't really care 2D from 3D so much." I mean, we still care, we still love 2D, but this idea of hybridizing things a little bit has become a thing, where you're using a little bit of 2D, a little bit of CG, and they're all playing well with each other and coming up with just spectacular stuff that we've never seen before. And people ask me all the time, what do you think the new trends are? And I think that's what the new trends are, is stuff that we haven't seen yet. And I'm always encouraging people who watch these streams, be that person who shows us something new that we haven't seen. Usually what it'll be is a new story idea, you know, a way of telling stories. This is such an old reference, but think about Quentin Tarantino when he came out with Pulp Fiction. Everybody talked about, ooh, it's not told in order. Oh, wow. I mean, now everybody does that, or at least it's not that big of a deal. But when it happened, everybody jumped on it and said, wow, that's incredible. Guess what? It had been done before. He wasn't the first person to come up with that idea, but he came up with it at a time when we were looking for something new and exciting, and he had that in his pocket, and it stuck. I mean, I'm sure he was as surprised as anybody, and delighted, but surprised when it actually worked out. So you can do that too. I mean, there's no reason why you can't also be one of these people who comes up with something that everybody was kind of waiting to see, but nobody really realized just yet how much we all wanted to see it. So, so we're talking about original stories and animation. Yeah, to be fair, I mean, the best animators I know, they are storytellers, and they're telling stories with their animation. And so telling a story with animation, I mean, telling a story with your own animation, but just being a storyteller in your animation, think about some of the things you've seen where you really liked it. Probably it was more than just an action. It wasn't just a character doing something, it was a character doing something in context, and that's where story comes in. So like this little thing I'm doing tonight, you know, it was part of a whole story I developed with this character getting frustrated and using magic, and that this little piece of animation kind of rose out of that. It wasn't something I just created in a vacuum. And so you can do the same thing with your animation, is tell stories and try to further your storytelling skills with animation. But the other thing is if sometimes I have friends on here people who stop by, who are wanting to sell their ideas and kind of be the person that comes up with the idea. And to which I always say, well, it's a great job if you can get it. It's also a very high pressure job, because unlike a lot of professions, they don't demote you and say, oh, well, go back and do what you were doing before. That didn't work out, but we'll keep you on. It's like, no, if you don't nail it when you're an idea person, they may say, well, we'll find somebody else who has ideas we actually want to purchase. But from an animation standpoint, yeah, it's just staying relevant, staying fluid, and keeping your skills up and looking what's happening in the world, and try to be innovative and have fun, and just remember to keep trying new things and experimenting, and not getting too stuck with one specific style or anything that you like that's very specific. You know, try to stay on top of what's going on in the world. You know, if you love it, you probably already are doing those things. So that's kind of, it's sort of just logic and rationale. This is like, well, yeah, if you liked, I always talk about Castle Transylvania or something. If you like that, well then draw in that style and keep doing it, and then morph that with your own style that you've created yourself. And little by little, you come up with your own style, and maybe you come up with an idea that is unique, that at least if we have seen it before, we haven't seen it in this form before. I always harken back to Adventure Time and how that was so well placed at a time when people were getting kind of sick of routine stuff. And suddenly this bizarre little cartoon came that spoke to a certain generation and had a specific look and feel to it that nobody really done before. And you know, there's still plenty of stuff out there to do that with, but that one just took off for whatever reason. And it can happen at any time, at any place, to anybody. I always talk about Lucas the Spider, the friend that I know who put that together just because it was fun, and then it ended up being this phenomenal thing. So you can do that too. maybe you can't do that. Maybe you won't have phenomenal success, but you'll have a lot of fun trying. And that's the thing I always talk about in my classes is enjoy this stuff, enjoy the process. It was taught to me very early on in my career, said enjoy what you're doing. Don't worry so much about the outcome. Oh, I'm going to be rich and famous. Just worry about whether or not you're having a good time right now, because animation is all about right now. It's all about what you're doing at the moment. And if you're not having fun doing it, then you probably need to find something else to do that you will have fun with. All right, so I'm kind of happy with how the hands are working. Now I'm going to flesh out a little bit more what the sleeves are doing because they're looking pretty stiff on this character. So right now I've added some in-betweens and made it so the hands pop up and then settle back down. But the sleeves themselves are looking a little bit stiff still. So I'm going to have them bounce up and gather and then flop back down. And again, if you want to look at a comparison, this is how it used to look. If you can see this. So it really just stopped. It just kind of came to a thud and stopped right there. And that's what I was talking about, is the character just stops and it just dies and the whole thing stops before the cut. And so either I'd probably either cut on the action, which would be right about here, and you don't see it come to a stop, or what I'm doing is extending the action so that the sleeve is just going to keep going all the way up to the last frame. So I'm going to add some frames in here and then play around with the sleeve and see if I can get the sleeve to get this nice floppy look. So got some thoughts here. Love making 2D hand-drawn animation. Don't know if you're ready to show my work. Is that normal? So to classics, AM87. Oh, that's absolutely normal. And I've said some things in streams past, but it bears repeating. When you get an opportunity to share your work, you really need to bring your, I hate saying this, but your A game, your best game. You need to bring your the best possible job you can do, because you may not get another chance if you blow it. And so don't share stuff with people who count, at least, until you absolutely are sure that what you're sharing is your best possible work. And then bring everything you've got and give it everything you've got. Don't worry if you don't get it, if you quote unquote lose. There is no loss. There's only, well, you'll do better next time. And if you love this stuff, there will be a next time. I'm living proof. There have been plenty of times when I thought it was all over and that was it. I was done. And then I found out, oh, well, if I just hung on, I was going to get another chance. I didn't really. Again, DreamWorks, they were always saying, oh, if you'd like to, I remember they said, oh, do you want to be a story person? I had just become a CG animation person officially. They had kind of, not so much a contest, but it kind of was, for like who's going to be a CG animator at the studio now that they were restructuring. And I was, I think, the only person who made the first cut, which is scary. And then right on the heels of that, they said, oh, and we're also looking for story people. I was like, ooh, you know, I mean, but I hadn't done story and I hadn't practiced, and I didn't have a real story things to show, and really my heart wasn't in it anyway. I just thought it was kind of funny that, you know, it's like, wow, there's all this opportunity. So if you really love this stuff, you'll get an opportunity. It'll come up. There's no just, oh, I got one chance and I blew it, and that's the end of that. But while you're waiting for your opportunity to show up, it's an excellent time to keep practicing your craft and even decide whether or not you love it. So making short films, making short animatics, I know that's the thing, everybody does it nowadays. You know, taking a piece of sound bites or piece from a movie and then just redo it your way, and show that you're creative. That's the main thing. But so as far as 2D hand-drawn animation, I would show it to people, just maybe not show it to people who count, who could hire you or look at your stuff and go, oh, you're just not ready. Hey, my first job that somebody said to me, they said, you are absolutely not ready. You're not even close. I asked, oh, well, you know, do you have any advice, any tips? And they went, no, so you're not even close. Well, I took that as a challenge, and I proved them wrong. We ended up being friends later. and she ended up being one of my favorite people. But initially, she was right. I mean, I wasn't ready, and so I showed it to friends and family, but I didn't show the good stuff until I actually thought I was really could stand by my work and go, yes, I believe that this was good. Can you tell me? And then they told me, I said, no, I don't think it's good, but keep trying. You're getting better. But anyway, to drawing skull, so keep creating original stories and characters, and something that's never been done before lead to better things for me in my career. Well, it can't hurt. It's better than not doing anything. And the important thing is to just not give up. And I see that very often. What separates people who are working from people who are not is that the people who just give up. And so you've got to keep doing the things that you love to do and not listen to people who say, "Oh, don't do that. That's not going to work," or "Do this instead. This is the only way to make it." You got to just kind of silence that and continue to do the things that you love. The bottom line is, if you aren't meant to do something, it's never going to happen. And there are some times when you have to say to you take a good long look in the mirror and say to yourself, okay, you know what? I really wanted that, and I really thought that that's what my road was, but it turns out that I just keep trying and it isn't working. For example, if you're not able to pay your rent, if you're not able to pay your way, if you've got college loans, school loans or something, and you've got to pay them off, then you at that point, yeah, you got to go, well, you know what? I'm going to keep my dreams and I'm going to keep working at them. But while I'm doing that, I'm going to continue to take care of business because I have to. That's just the way the world works. But that could very well mean that the answer to what you were looking for is just around the next corner. You just weren't ready for it yet. And that happened to me so many times in my career. And often it's not. What I really needed to do was just step out of the ring a little bit and focus on other things. And then sure as the world, next thing I knew, I got another opportunity, and then I made better use of it. So there is no such thing as failure. Do I sound like Yoda? If you guys even know who Yoda is, but there's no try. There's only do. It's true. It's go out there and do it. You fail, get up again, and do it again, and just keep doing it until eventually they don't know what else to do with you, so they hire you, or you have a bunch of friends because you've been talking to people online who are doing what you love to do, and eventually somebody that who you're friendly with says, "Oh, well, have you tried this place?" Or, "Oh, I have a friend who knows a friend who wants what you're doing," and that's because you just keep doing it and you keep practicing and trying new things, and then eventually you're going to get an in. And if you've worked hard and you've been working all this time, then when somebody says, "Hey, can you do this?" you go, "Why, look, yes, I can. Here you go." And that's how jobs come. Often is not. So yes, it will lead to better things for you and your career. Sometimes you make things, but it's nervous to show them sometimes. Yeah, you're nervous and you don't want to show stuff. Oh, is this? That's actually, I think I might know who this is. We just talked. Anyway, okay, so yeah, there comes a time when you're nervous about your stuff and you don't want to share it, but there's a certain point where you absolutely have to share your work. You have to show people what you're doing. Otherwise, how do they know what you're doing? And how do you grow if you don't show your stuff? I'm going to be honest here and tell you that being in the animation business meant that every day of my life I was criticized and told, sometimes rather bluntly, that what I was doing wasn't up to snuff, or it wasn't what the person who was in charge of me wanted, or every single day I'd have to present my work and I'd have to say, "Okay, I've done it. What do you think?" And then they'd say, "Go back and do it again, or do it this way instead." Or you can't be in a creative field where it's art for money, and where it's people who are paying you to create art that they want. You can't do that and not get criticized, and you need to get over it really fast. You need to get used to being criticized and take it for what it is, which is usually it's very helpful. Sometimes it stings, but at the end of the day, what people are trying to do is they're trying to make you better. and trying to get you up to snuff with how they want things to be done at their studios. So you get good at taking things with a grain of salt and taking what's good about criticism and tossing the part that's not so good. But you have to do that. You have to, you just have to get good at it. And not get hurt by it every time somebody criticizes you. So eventually you have to start showing stuff to people and let them criticize. And I always say to my students too, they'll say, well, you know, I did this wrong and I did that wrong and I meant to do this and meant to do that, but I didn't. And I always say to them, you gotta let me criticize you before you criticize yourself. I may not even agree with you. I may think that you've done something much differently than you think you did it. And that's part of the process. That's just kind of how the whole thing works. So if you want to do this for a living, work in creativity, in whatever angle you're approaching it from, you have to accept criticism and take the good with the bad. Sometimes the good is you get a lot of great compliments. Sometimes you get a lot of really exciting things from seasoned professionals like I did, where you're having people who are really legends in the business saying, well, why don't you try doing it this way instead? That might be easier and it might look better. And then other times you get people who are kind of petty and low, and they are determined to try and cut you down. And you take that with a grain of salt as well. And so, yeah, eventually when you're ready, you've got to start showing your work to people and getting used to fielding that stuff. But, you know, wait until you're ready. Don't do it too soon or you'll probably get discouraged. And we don't want that. We want you to always having fun and keep doing it. So you got to just kind of protect yourself and know it's like, okay, you know what? This is for me. I'm just doing this for fun. I don't want criticism. I don't want critiques. I just want to just do this and get it out there and say I did it. And then other times it's like, hit me. I'm ready. So. And then as far as my animation, if you're interested in seeing it, I mean, just continue to share my animation on these streams every week. You can go back and look at old ones or look at new ones coming up. If I ever get this thing finished, which at the rate I'm going, I probably won't any in this century, but I have something that's sort of like a Sleeping Beauty princess thing where she's spinning around in a room and her dress is flailing around. That's a good one for overlap and follow through too. But my stuff it's based kind of in the old school Disney style. It's what I was trained in. That's what I was raised with. That's what I like. I either do that or I do limited animation because I was raised with a lot of that too. Experimental stuff. And those are the things that I get the most excited about with animation. But I also get very excited about stuff that's new and different and new styles. Every time something new comes out and my students tell me about it, I'm always really thrilled to see that people are still innovating and still coming up with new ways to do the same old thing. So, well, my stuff, I would call it probably a little bit on the old-fashioned side, maybe a lot old-fashioned. But I've also noticed that it's not a thing as much anymore. So the old-fashioned look might end up turning out to be the new fashion look when people are like, "Ooh, that's really cool. I want to do that." So everything kind of cycles back around. But yeah, this is where I share stuff that I've worked on, different scenes that I work on, and each week I try to break it up a little bit and show something I haven't shown the last time. So last week we did limited animation stuff. This, well, thank you. Thank you for that. So last time I did some limited animation stuff. This time, or the week before that, I did something that was kind of Don Bluethy with Dirk the Daring character. And then this week I'm doing this kind of Mickey Mousey looking thing. And like I said, next week I might do this kind of more Sleeping Beauty looking thing. And, you know, so it just keeps going. I've got a whole bunch of these. I do a character take, and I've done dialogue. So each week I try to do something. So for people who are repeat offenders, if they come back, they won't see the same thing every week. All right. So this is starting to look a little more loose and floppy. I'm just now going to start tweaking it and kind of looking at some of the things that are working and things that aren't working, and just try to make it so that it's nice and smooth, and then do finishing touches on it. And then I might actually start cleaning it up tonight and doing some nice cleanup lines on it. Still got this little problem here with the base of the robe, so I'm just kind of trying to work some of the kinks out of the base of the robe. But anyway, just comments. Yes, I love seeing other people's work as well. So it's one of the fun things about teaching is I get to see my students work and see all the exciting things that they're working on. A ton of people are already making the last Airbender with different characters reanimated. That's awesome. Hey, Colin. Nice to see you, Colin. Yeah, I like doing fan fiction stuff. I'm a big fan of fan fiction stuff where you take something that already exists and put your own spin on it. I love that stuff. So you're looking for anatomy books, and when you have figure drawing, design, and invention by Michael Hampton. I'm always looking at older books. I have them available. I will pull them out in just a moment. Just want to see some other comments. Artists' greatest critics themselves. Artists looking down on their work. Oh, hello, Gonzo. Nice to see you. I've seen a lot of talent. Yeah, so it's important that you don't look down on your own work. It's important that you respect yourself enough to say, this is where I'm at right now, and this is the best I can do right now. I hope to get better. And everybody can get better. So, you know, yeah, don't precede a comment with lots of talking yourself down. Like I said, let people do it for you. Take it on the chin. Take it for what it's worth. Use what you can. Toss what you can't. But it doesn't help to say, oh, I know that this isn't that good. In fact, you've actually set someone up to go, yeah, you're right. I agree. It's not that good. Whereas if you just say, but this is where I'm at. This is what I'm doing with my scene. I would love comments that can help me with overlap and follow through, for example, what we're talking about today. So from the Japanese bookstores, a lot of good anatomy books, drawing tutorials. Oh, that's great. Thank you for these resources, you guys. I love it when you guys share things. And that's what I was going to talk about was Loomis. So Andrew Loomis does some great construction of human figures. It's kind of outdated, but it's still really good stuff. So you draw people who look like they're from the 50s, generally speaking, with Loomis, or 40s actually. But it's just great stuff, and it doesn't get old. It's still stuff that you can use. So those are some great resources. Thanks, you guys, for including those. And yeah, if you think of any others, be sure and go ahead and share them, because as you can see, people really appreciate this stuff, and we welcome them. All resources. I'm always looking for new resources. Another thing I always say too is, maybe I should support people who are selling things, but you can always look online. There are so many things, for example, on Pinterest. That's a good resource. And what are some other, but just, you know, if you type in a life drawing and you look online, you may find that there are all sorts of great resources out there for how to construct, how to you know, things to look at when you're life drawing. There's tons of life drawing models out there, and a lot of them that you can get for free. And so just type in a free life drawing model, and you may find all sorts of resources pop up. You just kind of have to know what you're looking for, I suppose. But I've never had a hard time searching for things. The problem is you fall into the rabbit hole and you start looking up all sorts of crazy things when you were really just trying to find one specific thing. And at that point, they can be kind of problematic. But I'll leave that up to you. That's up to your personal discipline to sort out things that are very specific to what you're looking for, and then not get distracted. Yeah, Burn Hogarth, another one. Great. Awesome, you guys. That's really cool. So you've got a huge gallery of Pinterest drawing for help, including anatomy and painting. You could share it. Yeah, I will leave that up to you if people are willing to share things. And thanks again. I know who you are now, so thank you for offering to share stuff. You're so helpful. I really, really appreciate it. And thanks for stopping by tonight. It's great to see you some more. But yes, there's just a whole wealth of stuff out there, and don't let it hold you back. Speaking of which, as you're I don't know how to quite say that, but again, I know you are. Anyway, but speaking of which, you should always have a library of reference materials. You should be compiling that even as we speak. Every time you find something cool online, you should be forming a folder so that you can always refer back to it and go, okay, well, here are a bunch of drawings of people, different sizes, different shapes. Here are a bunch of different animals. Again, different sizes, different shapes, different species. Cats, dogs, anything you can get your hands on, and then keep it in a library and keep it well marked so that when the time comes, you can be sure and draw upon that. So it's like, oh, I need a dog fast. Oh, I need a cat. Let's see. I got all these things. And what I use it mostly for is for background stuff, because I'm terrible at doing backgrounds. And so if you want to just slug in a telephone booth or something, you can have this library built up. I got the idea from Mark Crumb when I watched his documentary from the 90s. It's really a great documentary about a bunch of kooky people, but a brilliant artist. I don't always agree with Mark Crumb's obsessions. I think some of them are kind of nasty, but as an artist, I think he's phenomenal. And so he always recommended getting something together where you're, I mean, he didn't recommend it, he just did it by example. He was actually providing that. And I thought, wow, what a great idea to have all this stuff laid out so that when you need it, it's there. There's nothing worse than you're right in the middle of creating something and you got to stop what you're doing and suddenly go find reference or go create reference or just search. And again, then you find yourself going down the rabbit hole looking at other stuff, and next thing you know, all that time you could have been drawing, you've wasted it just looking at stuff. And so if you have all that stuff available, you can just go, oh wait, I need a dog, bam, there's a dog. And same with other materials as well. So yes, reference library. I'm a huge fan of keeping a reference library for all sorts of different things, and one of them can be life drawing reference or life drawing lessons. Well, hello, Machini. Thank you for commenting. Pinterest is awesome. Yeah, you're destined to get more and more and more as Pinterest tries to get you to come back to the website. They'll keep saying, we found some more things for you. But I'm always happy when they do that, because they seem to pick up on what I like really fast. So yeah, unique poses. Try drawing things that are in different poses than you're used to. I always say this about people who like a particular style specifically. I'm not naming names here, but specifically the anime style. Is people will start with the style first and they'll neglect learning how to draw in favor of, well, I just want to draw this specific style. And I was guilty of it. That's how I know. This is a thing, is because I specifically would draw in the Don Bluth style before I really learned how to draw, period. And so I took a lot of life drawing classes after the fact, but I really wish I would have paid more attention in them, because they would have taught me the importance of learning how to draw first and then applying a style later. And so one of the things that can help you with that is drawing in unique poses, drawing in strange poses, things that are very different than what you're comfortable with, and that's how you evolve and grow. It's important to also draw for fun and not specifically, just torturing yourself all the time with drawing things just because you think it'll get you a job or whatever. But it's important to also stretch and grow as an artist and not always draw in the particular style you're most familiar with. So that's good points all about having a reference library and about having having things that you do that are outside your comfort zone. So just something to think about. And so started drawing an anime style, but realized you needed to go to the basics. I stopped. I wonder if that was in somebody in a class who told you to do that stuff, or or another teacher who told you, maybe you should focus on learning anatomy, and then you come back to your style, and you'll just be astounded at how much it's improved your ability to draw the way you wanted to in the first place. So that's what I'm trying to say is once you step away from your style and learn the basics, the foundational stuff, you may find that when you get back to drawing in your own specific style that you like it better because you actually understand it more. And I always liken it to learning scales. If you're going to play an instrument, specifically, in my case, piano specifically, because I started out playing by ear and I didn't know anything about piano and just kind of did whatever I felt like. And then I started taking formal lessons and was learning scales. My teacher was teaching me scales, and I was like, I don't want to do this. That's not fun. And that's kind of how I looked at life drawing too when I was learning to draw. It's like, well, I just want to jump to the fun stuff. This stuff's boring. I wasn't really like that. I was typical of my age, and I think when you're young, you want stuff to come quickly and easily and have fun. But my teacher was very adamant. He said, you need to learn a little bit more about the foundations of this stuff, and then you can apply it. And she was very right about that. And I was awfully glad eventually when I did know scales that I was able to be a better artist as a piano player because I had taken the time to learn the scales and learn some of the foundational stuff. And then when I came back to it, I was like, oh, wow, I'm much better than I used to be. And so hopefully you'll find that to be the case as well. I'm just kind of wrapping it up here with this overlap and follow through that I've done. While I was doing the overlap and follow through, I kind of realized I wasn't real thrilled with how the character kind of gained weight at the end. Went from a pose where he was kind of thin and up in this really, so there he's actually kind of thin, which is how the Avatar character was in the movie. He's actually a little too thin there. And then he got really fat here at the end, so I'm actually changing that. And I'm going to just kind of compare this frame to this frame and then see how he should look. And then work that back in a little bit. I'm almost done here with the rough animating. Then I'm going to start cleaning this up, which is always fun. Get to see a nice final line on the thing. And then get to see it colored. Although I'm not probably going to color it tonight because I haven't really thought that much about what I want this character to look like from a color standpoint. I don't want it to be Avatar. I just want it to recall Avatar. And so I'll probably work that out when I'm not yammering away. But I will definitely finish up this little section here in just a moment. So I'm just kind of erasing the stuff that was there before, and then I'll go back and lay it in again a little bit nicer. And then a lot of this stuff I'll probably end up doing in cleanup because I'm going to rely on doing slow outs. I can already tell that the slow out's working. I can see it from the hands and from the sleeves. That was the important part. The rest I can always just do in-betweens, and that will take care of it. And that's part of what happens in this process is you just sort of get to a point where you're like, okay, I've drawn enough. I know that it's going to work when I lay in that final pose. But I'll probably just put in a few extra drawings just so it makes it a little more clear that yes, he goes from here to that last frame. So just go in, do some in-betweens, and finish this off. And then I'll do some final touches. I think I still need to fix his arms. I think I biffed his arm, so I don't know if I'm going to do that while I'm on camera. Because I might have to think about that a little bit. I think I switched his arms around. We'll see. See in a minute. But the sleeves, what I actually set out to do, I think that's working all right for now. So I'll play that, show you the difference between how it used to look and how it looks now that I put some actual thought into the overlap and follow through. And technically speaking, I am having this character stop by the end of the scene. but it's stopping with just like one drawing. So it's still technically kind of, the body has stopped, but the cape, the sleeves, they're actually still moving. So, all right, so let's see how this looks. Back out on a little bit so I can get a grand image of the whole thing. So now you can see that his sleeve kind of flops up and it flops back down again. It's a little bit much. It's a little bit obvious at this point, but maybe I want it to be obvious. It is 2D and it's very cartoony. You can see the exaggeration frames that I did with his hands in here. So I was obviously going for a very cartoony sort of squash and stretchy look with this. So you can see it here too. So really exaggerated the hands. It has that cartoony look. So I think it's okay. I'm going to live with it with the sleeves. I think that's enough of that. And again, like I said, with the foot turning, I'm going to leave that. So now let's take a comparison. Let's look at how it looked originally. So you can see that the arms swing and they just stop. The sleeves just kind of come to a stop, and that's the end of it. It's not bad, but it's not nearly as interesting as this, where the sleeves at the end, they kind of bounce up and they come back, and now it's got that bouncy, stretchy, squash and stretch quality, which again, all comes from having done the bouncing ball a few times, a few hundred times probably. That's just one of those things that you keep practicing it and it starts to assimilate. It starts to kind of become part of your brain. So that's oh, thanks. I'm glad you liked the animation. I appreciate it. Appreciate the feedback. Well, hi there, Jordan. Welcome. Nice to see you again. I hope you're doing well. And thank you for stopping by. It's always fun to hear from you. We've got some cool conversations going on. Some interesting links and things if you're interested. So Rocket Power is one of the greatest animated TV series ever. Okay, cool. I'll take your word for it. That's cool. Just a second here. Just checking on something. Okay, cool. Great. Well, I'm always happy to hear about new and interesting shows that people like, and I'm sure other people who are watching this or commenting on it, they're always happy to hear too. So if anybody else is a fan of Rocket Power, we've got a fan too. And Hey Arnold, now that one I know for sure. Yeah, I liked Hey Arnold. I always thought that was a good one. All right, so now I'm gonna go in here and fix up the arms if I can. So I kind of mixed up the arms here. I actually had them. So the one that's on top is the one that is actually supposed to be on the bottom, and vice versa. So I'm going to just kind of fix that. Sometimes the easiest way to fix it is just to reverse engineer things. And like I said, this happens quite frequently when you're doing a walk cycle and you mix up which leg is which. And since this is a redux of a scene that I had done years and years and years ago, and since I was probably doing this live, I just kind of mixed up which arm is which and which leg is which, but I'm going to go and fix that now, hopefully. And just kind of play with that a little bit, and then I'll be unofficially done with this, barring any last minute tweaks that I want to do to it. Rocket Power has one of the best theme songs. Cool. So yeah, so we got another fan, Jordan, and I kind of had a feeling you'd like it. You always seem to be on top of what the cool things are out there, I've noticed, so it's awesome. And then I always say that I'm gonna have to go and check some of this stuff out, because you guys always come up with really cool recommendations. So one thing that I can say for sure is it's very important to always flip your work. And by flipping, what I mean is sometimes you turn off the backlight or the onion skin or whatever you're using, and just flip your drawings and just make sure they're doing exactly what you want to do. It's really easy to let stuff go to let stuff get away from you if you don't. And the real test of whether or not your animation is working is whether or not when you flip it, it looks right. Because you can do in-betweens for days, and you can trace things off and make it look as perfect as any computer would ever try to interpolate anything. And then when you play it, it just doesn't work. It doesn't look right. And so the real way that you want to work is you just want to constantly be flipping. And I remember I had a seasoned veteran, one of the many legends that I worked with, I'm not going to say who, but he had said to me, he goes, ideally, you would like to be drawing while your drawings are moving. Like you just place a line while the thing is actually in motion. Just try to catch it every time it goes by, just try to add another line. And when we were working in the old days, we'd flip things like this with 3 sheets of paper between our fingers. We'd try to draw while we were flipping. And I just learned that from one of the many amazing animators that I worked with. And I think it's still true even in the digital arena. So you're still looking at this as something that's in motion. And that's part of the goal, is that you want to make sure that it works in motion. Individual drawings themselves, while they can be wonderful things, they won't sell your work unless the motion itself is working really nicely. So that's something I've always taken with me everywhere I've gone, even when I was in CG animation, even when I was doing creature effects, is looking at my work in motion and making sure that that's the thing that's most important. That the animation itself looks nice, even if the drawings don't look their best necessarily. So, and Jimmy Neutron, I think, John Skull, I think you actually mentioned Jimmy Neutron a while back. And yeah, I remember that one. And Jordan, you obviously like it. Cool. Nice. Again, I love when you guys communicate with each other on these forums. It's always fun for me to see what you guys are into and what you like to watch. You know, and the things that inspired you. I think it's really important to you know, be aware of the things that inspired you to do what you love, because that's kind of going to be your style at some point. You're going to eventually create your own style out of all the many things that you watched over the years and that you loved, and that will kind of be processed in your computer, in your brain, and be spit out as the style that you like best. And out of that, getting back to what sometimes people ask me about, well, what's my style, or what are my ideas? How are they going to be unique? How will I sell myself as being different than the others? Well, it's the joining together of all your different things that you loved over the years, and then because you practice and draw and practice and draw, you spit it out as your own specific style. And people say to me, well, how long does it take, you know, to develop a style? Well, the answer, unfortunately, is it takes as long as it takes. So some people get a sense of style really early on, and they know exactly how they want things to look. I'm thinking of Michel Gagne, who does Insanely Twisted Rabbits and Story of Rex, and he's working on Story of Rex. There's a feature or show or something. Right now, he's always had that style, and I know there are other people who work in that style, and he actually had people working on that with him who are also really, you know, good artists in their own right. But to the best of my knowledge, that was always Michel's thing, and he always had it. And the rest of us just kind of looked on in awe. But you know, some people it takes a little longer to come up with their style, and that's okay. There's nothing wrong with that at all. Just keep practicing and doing your thing. I don't know when I realized I had my own style. I'm not even sure sometimes that I do, but I've had enough people tell me that I'm in agreement. And it's a combination of all the things that I used to love when I was growing up. And that's how I figured out that's how it works. So keep watching things you like, keep copying the things that you like, but do it with purpose. Do it with an understanding that you're actually trying to learn how those people came up with the things that they did, so that you can do it yourself and do it with your own sense of style and creativity. And then you can climb on the shoulders of past masters, and that's the way it's always been done. as far as I know, correct me if I'm wrong, but from time immemorial, people have had a master, had masters, and then they try to copy those masters and then build up their own sense of style based on that. So, and see if you guys have come up with any other cool, really cool, exciting recommendations. Planet Sheen, that's awesome. Some of the early 2000s stuff. Good. So I'm glad that you're referencing, taking some of the good stuff from the past and then bringing it forward. That is, again, that's a sense of style. There's not enough of the early 2000s animation. Love to see it come to light. Well, yeah, if you guys want to see it, they'll make it. Preferably, if you will pay for it, then they will make it. You may have noticed, something like Cuphead. Something like Cuphead was a Something like Cuphead was a resounding success, and so they're going to make more of them. That's just the way it works. I've talked about the Hollywood machine several times in these streams, and what I'm always trying to convey is that it is not about, oh, well, there are mean people out there or nice people. It's about there are people who will pay money to see something, and if they will pay money, then Hollywood will make more of it. And so if you like something, support it. I know somebody that I used to work with who he was the first person who ever told me that he was all in with Kickstarter. I'm not sure if it was even Kickstarter at the time, maybe it was something else. But he was like, oh, I'm always donating to Kickstarter projects and supporting things. And as a result, people like him, Kickstarter has become a successful and lucrative thing that even professionals use. And so if you like something, support it. I'm guilty of this. We're all guilty of it. When you see something that's freeware and they say, a little bit of a donation here or there, and then you just take it and move on. But if you actually support that, then it gives that person, whoever created, an opportunity to keep doing it because they're making a little cash off of it. And so I strongly urge that if you like something, that you support it and show your support, usually in financial ways. And then that will ensure that more will be created in the future. So just something to think about as you're thinking about those things that you like that you wish would be prominently displayed. Well, often it's not the reason that they get focus is because money can be made off of it. So support things, give them your money, and watch them create ever more of those things. Well, that's the theory anyway. Prove that I'm wrong or prove that I'm right. I'm always happy to learn myself. But traditionally, I've noticed that that's the way it usually works. And so it's up to you guys. You guys are the ones who are excited about this stuff and have you're the demographic that they're looking for. They're going to look to you to see what it is you want and try to give it to you. And with the idea that if they do, then the reward will be they'll get lots of money. So just stuff to think about, whether you're a fan or you're actually hoping to produce, is that often as not, it comes down to cash. So anyway, it's a good way to tell if you have styles, if people tell you that they are able to recognize your style just by looking. Yes, for sure. Yeah, I absolutely agree. When people look at your work and go, wow, you've got a really nice style, then odds are it's because you do. Sometimes it's because people don't know any better, but that's usually people who aren't artists, and they're not probably going to say, oh, you have a really nice style. They're going to say, oh, that's cool. When someone says that you have a nice style, it's usually because they know what style is and how hard it is to come by and how difficult it can be at times to have your own unique sensibility about things. And so, yeah, when people tell you that they think your stuff has got a nice style to it, be sure and listen and be happy that you found something that is unique to you. All right, so this one looks like it needs another in-between. I'm going to go ahead and draw another whole drawing here and make sure that this one is nice and smooth. So people can pick out and say, hey, this art is very you, and if they can't tell what they think, that, yeah, that's true. Yeah, people have often said, I have a specific, I'm not going to talk too much about it, but I have the specific things that I do over and over again, and people are quick to point out to me, it's like, oh yeah, that's totally a Scott creation. I can tell that that's your thing. And again, it comes from me having looked at the work of other people, and saying, ooh, I really like that, I think I'll take it. And then adding that to my repertoire of images. Not necessarily physically, but I mean, I do have lots and lots of, I do have a library of stuff that I've kept from people I really like, and I look at it often, and I'm influenced by it often. But, you know, mentally, I took some things from Don Bluth, I took some things from classic Disney, Milk Call, I'm a fan of that look. It was also popular when I was in the 70s. A lot of people were copying that look in Disney films. There's this artist called Wally Wood. I talk about him every now and then. I got a lot of the way I draw is from his style. He drew for Mad Magazine in the 1950s when it was a really weird. Mad Magazine in the 70s was very different than Mad Magazine. A lot of people know it from the 70s, 80s, and 90s until it stopped. But a lot of people don't think about the fact that it was going from the 1950s, and it was very different then. It was like based in comic books and not so much parodies of movies and things. And so that's the stuff that I really, really liked. They were just incredible artists, and Wally Wood just was demented. Had just a really fascinating style that I think is both funny and very aesthetically pleasing. It's also very stiff and rigid, and I've been criticized for that periodically in my career. It's like, loosen up, and they're right, I should. And Wally Wood was criticized for that as well. So I'm like, oh, I'm in good company. They're criticizing me the same way they did him. But yeah, so a lot of Bakshi was a big influence. Obviously, I'm doing that tonight. Some of his films. When I was a kid, I saw them. Maybe I shouldn't have, but I did, and it influenced me a lot. And then I'm a child of the 70s, so a lot of experimental animation from Sesame Street and Electric Company and Schoolhouse Rock. So I'm Just a Bill and all that. All that stuff just kind of mushed together, one might even say. And then out of that, and then plus, you know, fantasy art, things that I copied. Out of that came my own particular style. And I kept what I liked, and I tossed what I didn't. And that's how I came up with the look that I have in my work. So, yeah, Cuphead looks great. Again, I don't know if it's a good game or not. I have conflicting people have told me whether or not Cuphead's a fun game, but it certainly looks cool. They're bringing back the animatics. Oh, that's awesome. Fun. Throw more money at Rise of the Turtles. Would it be impossible to watch in the US? That's not fun. Cool. I love it when you guys share stuff that you like. Hollow Knight. Cool. I'll have to check that out. I'm not really sure what Hollow Knight is, so sweet. Missed the turtles. Good. I love that you guys are sharing this stuff. Thank you. I appreciate when you chat with each other in the chats and share information, because I don't know everything, that's for sure. I don't know a lot. You guys know what's happening, and I learn from this as well. So nice. Yeah, obviously the Spider-Verse, I was a huge fan of that. Cool. So I'll let you guys continue on. That great. Awesome. So Classic AM, do you have ask a question? Do you have a favorite animator? I don't know if that's for me or if it's for everybody. Feel free to pipe in and say if you like something in particular. You like the 90s X-Men and Spider-Man. Oh, that's cool. So I don't know. I don't know that I do have a favorite animator, to be perfectly honest. That's a good question. I think I probably lean more towards School of Milk Call. I like all the squared off edges. I think that style makes it very easy to draw, and you get really dynamic aspects out of it. Stylistically, I preferred the Don Bluth stuff, which is also it's based on Milk Call, that squared off stuff. But I don't know. I honestly don't know who is responsible for that look. I know John Pomeroy did a lot of Princess Daphne, and so will forever be one of my idols for that alone. From Dragon's Lair, Princess Daphne, and I got to meet him, and I think probably when I, because I worked with him. I mean, that's what's so surreal about working at Disney is they're like, oh yeah, here's John Pomeroy, here's Glenn Keane, here's Andreas Deja. I remember meeting Andreas. He showed us that video of, maybe you've seen it, where they explode a whale on a beach, and he just thought it was the funniest thing he'd ever seen. Newscasters sitting there going, and now we're going to destroy this whale that was dead on the beach, and we're going to blow it up. And they do, and then all the guts fall down on everybody's head while the newscaster is just standing there. And Andreas just thought that was the funniest thing in the whole world, and he shared it with us. I can't remember why. Just a small group of us at lunchtime. He said, hey guys, you got to see this. It's really funny. And I know people who are now friends with him, and he's working on his own animated project. He's been doing it for a while, and he's employed a lot of my pals who did cleanup work. And so that's still in the works, still coming any day now, any year now, something like that. But anyway, so just the idea that you could walk down the hall and talk to these people, that was probably one of the best parts of working in the big studios. And then the same thing with DreamWorks. When I was working every day, I'd have to go check my work with James Baxter on Spirit, because he was the horse and Spirit character guru. And got to a point where you'd have to actually sign up to talk to him because he was so busy, and everybody wanted time with him, and everything he said was gold. And so you really wanted to spend some time with him, but you had to allow him to work as well. But he was right down the hall, and I learned so much just talking to him on a friendly basis. And then Ken Duncan's another one, just became kind of a friend, and he was willing to share with me all sorts of cool stuff that he knew and that he had learned in his career. Another one, Dale Bear. I guess I could say I'm a fan of Dale Bear. He's taught me everything I knew when I was getting started. I worked at his studio, and he would just share stuff. He's like, well, why not? He enjoyed it. It's kind of like I do now. I enjoy teaching. I enjoy sharing information that I learned that I kind of take for granted, don't even think about it anymore. Which is one of the reasons I sometimes ask if there's something you want to know specifically, because I kind of forget what I know. And these people taught us, and it's kind of an oral tradition, oral, O-R-A-L. One person hands it off to another. And so all the stuff that they taught me, I share in my classes best I can. But at a certain point, you just have to do it. You have to go out and do it. And so you look at the stuff that you love, and you stop being a fan, and you start actually being someone who's working. And so I worked with Dale Bear, and he would say to me, he's like, go further, push it further. I'm like, oh, what? It's too much. I don't want to go there. He's like, no, have fun. I did something for June Foray, not for her, but it was a show, and she was the voice. And she always did the little old lady in Warner Brothers cartoons. And when I met her, she goes, you probably don't know who I am, but I did Cindy Lou Who. I did the voice. I'm like, are you kidding? I know who you are. Trust me. But Dale had said to me, he's like, push it further. Listen to her voice and listen to what she's doing. She's being really funny, and push it further and further. And so the idea that a legendary animator is sitting there coaching me and telling me how to do some animation on a short that unfortunately did never see the light of day, but I don't even remember what it was called, but it was another old lady thing for June Foray to do the voice on, and I was just ecstatic that I got to be a part of that. And you just didn't think about that when you were working in these studios. It's like, oh, they're people too. So a lot of them were my favorite animators just because I was in awe of their work, and a lot of them still working today, and still in love with animation. Samurai Jack, yeah, I like that one too. You guys are awesome. Teenage Robot, that's great. And now you're just being too flattering. One of my students has said something very nice about my work, so I appreciate that. But I will go on record as saying I stand more than in the shadow of the masters. I'm a little tiny person standing in the shadow of the masters and what they did and how they worked. So while I appreciate the compliments, I am more than eager to pass the baton and say, no, no, no. If I'm doing anything right, I learned it from the people that taught me, who were fantastic animators who learned from the original masters, or just the influence of just being there. And this is something I always talk about this. I say this all the time, but I think it's worth mentioning all the time. One of the advantages of being in the big studios where all these people worked was that you got to, by osmosis, it all sort of sank in. And so you can tell when I was working at Disney and DreamWorks by the work that I was doing. My work just improved by leaps and bounds, just having all those amazing, talented artists and all the work that they were doing for the films around all the time. It couldn't help but make my work better. And then doing a lot of life drawing and practicing my craft on my free time, that also was a big factor. But I can't underestimate the value of being around very talented people and then having it rub off on them, on what they do rub off on you. And that is a key component to getting better and better at what you do. And learning on the job is one of the most wonderful experiences ever. I got to learn on the job with CG animation. Unfortunately, I was learning, I'm not going to say where or when, and people who know me know where and when, but I will say I was learning on a crew that had never done it before. And so I ended up teaching people, even though I was new myself, but a lot of people hadn't done it before. And so they were still getting used to the medium of CG animation. And I was kind of laughing, going, really? You guys know how to do this? I'm new and I know how things like the graph editor and all that, and the importance of it, not being afraid of it, blah, blah, blah. That's not a topic for another day, but so things changed a lot in CG animation when it kind of took over, and a lot of 2D animators were left high and dry. We're still animators, but they were having to operate in a different medium, and I felt very bad for some of them. It's like they didn't want to do it, they just had to do it. By the same token, I would always recommend people love motion graphics more than the tools that create them. I mean, if you love to draw, obviously you want to do 2D. That's a given. But if you're like me and you kind of love it all, then you owe it to yourself to learn all about all of it and just experiment, see what's out there. And I think we were talking today about cutout animation or paper cutouts. I mean, like actual physical cutout pieces of paper that you move around. Try it. Why not? It'll be fun. And then that may end up being the next wave, where people actually want physical pieces of paper moved around on a frame because it looks different. You can't get that look with a computer or whatever, or clay animation. Aardman has made a whole cottage industry out of doing that stuff, right? So, so I always say, do what you love and what you do. Aqua Teen Hunger Force, awesome. Stop, too much nostalgia, sorry. Courage the Cowardly Dog. Yeah, okay, you're right. I think, and Cat Dog. I think you guys are getting off laces. I know what generation you guys are from. You can always tell by what animation people watched. So Maya grinds my gears sometimes. I prefer 2D in all honesty. Teen Brooms a much more tolerable girlfriend than mine is. Sure. No, I get it. I absolutely get it. I always say, I've said this a million times, but Maya and After Effects are the two hardest programs I ever learned. And so for that very reason, I recommend that you learn them, get it out of the way, and everything after that's going to be easier, trust me. So just doing some cleanup work on this. As far as tie down goes, it's too late in the day to actually do some cleanup drawings, but I'm just doing some final tie down stuff on this, and then I will hopefully be ready to clean it up. Maybe when we see it next time, it's going to look nice and pristine. Before you do that though, you need to go through your rough animation and make sure that your rough animation looks as clean as it needs to look, so that all the information is there, so it looks like it's really what you were trying to communicate from the start, and that nothing leaps out. And what usually happens is when you're doing a pass like this, when you're doing rough, is you'll be deceived into thinking your animation is working really nicely, and because it's rough, and then when you go to finalize it, you find out, oh dear, there are all these things that I didn't quite nail. And there's nothing I hate worse, at least. I'm not thinking that's a pretty extreme thing to say, but one of the things I really don't like is when I go to do a cleanup pass and then I find out that my rough animation isn't quite as clean as I needed it to be, and I'm having to make animation decisions when all I should really be doing is kind of going on autopilot and doing a nice, relaxing, I find it relaxing anyway, cleanup pass, and all the major animation choices have been worked out already, and now it's just about going in and making sure that I have a nice clean line on the existing animation. But the animation choices have all been thought out and worked out, and now I can kind of relax and concentrate on making a really nice, pristine, clean line on my stuff. So here it looks like we just have one too many frames. I just don't need an extra. So I'm just going through now and just making some final decisions about timing and placement. I have some instances here where I have 3 frames where only 2 are necessary, so I'm just going to do some of that. How you guys doing? Watch the Super Robot Monkey Team Hyperforce Go. I'll tell you, that's one interesting title. That's great. It's a shame it did get canceled. Too bad. Just have Blender. Classics AM 87, so you know modeling and animation. Well, I always say better to know a lot of things, and that makes you a jack of all trade and not necessarily a master of anything, but I survived my entire career by being pretty good at a lot of things and not necessarily attaining master status at any one thing. And I can say with confidence that I did pretty well. I'm not complaining about my career. Always felt like I had got to do the things I wanted to do and didn't have to spend a lot of time doing things I didn't want to do. Don't tell anyone, but I just moved out the student version when I use it, but it was just really, I think Maya has gotten a lot better at, I mean, I think that they make it a lot more accessible. I don't think they mind so much that you use the student version. Correct me if I'm wrong, but that's been my experience. It used to be that Maya was impossible to get, and so we were always trying to get on to Maya so just so we could learn it, and they made it really difficult. And you had to have a license, and only so many people could use a license, and it cost them money. And so I got around that by going and taking classes, and even if I knew everything they were going to do in the class, I would just use the lab time that the class provided and just go crazy animating stuff on my own time, and that's how I got better. So nowadays you don't have to worry about that so much. So the student version's fine. I think it either just leaves a watermark or it just says every time you use it, it says, oh, you have to say you're using a student version of this, blah, blah, blah. So Teen Titans Go. Teen Titans, yeah. Adventures of Bill and Mandy, never heard of it. Johnny Bravo, we talked about that one. That's recently in the stream. That one's really good. Ed, and Eddie, Dexter's Lab. Wow, you really are going down the rabbit hole of the classics, 90s. I love Dexter's Lab. I watched it every day. I watched Rugrats. I was addicted to it. I was, I don't know, in my late 30s, and I couldn't start my day without watching. I think it was on in the mornings. Rugrats had come on, and I don't know, something about that show appealed to me. I remember I was working for somebody who was a classic animation person, and they said, yeah, but it's just so ugly. How can you watch it? It's so, the babies are gross. And I'm like, yeah, but they're cool. They're cool babies who come up with interesting ideas. Foster's Home. Oh, nice. So we've got about 5 minutes left before the stream ends for today. I appreciate you commenting today. We got to over 100 comments, and we get little perks for stuff like that. So I appreciate your conversations you've been having. I would like to welcome you to come back anytime and talk about anything, what other shows you like. We can continue this conversation next time, as well as time flies. Thank you for hanging out with us. Yeah, time flies when you're having fun, hopefully. And hopefully you guys have had some fun today. Like I said, I invite you to come back every week. I'm here at this time. I always talk about different things. I'm just going to run this, what I was working on, so you can see how it turned out. Now that it's got the nice sleeve going, I realized that the hat at the end, it needs a little bit more overlap and follow through. But for the most part, I'm done with this, and I'm going to start cleaning it up, probably either starting next week or soon. But now that you've seen the final, you can compare it to the way it looked before and tell me, what do you think? Do you think that hat's a little bit better now that it's more floppy? Maybe the sleeves are a little better, they're more floppy. I've even added some exaggeration to the hands. Anyway, so that's what I was working on today. You can see the real thing. Like I said, I'm here every week at this time for 2 hours, starting 2 hours from when it's ending right now, wherever you happen to be. And each week I try to come up with something a little different to talk about, but I love having people talk about the things they're interested in and joining in on the chat and making friends. So please feel free to continue to do that. Yeah, and those of you who are former students of mine, which I know Jordan, you're on that list, you get access to Slack for as long as you participate on it. I just found this out today, 30 days after you stop playing on it. If you don't show up for 30 days, they delete your account. But as long as you keep showing up on Slack, you are welcome to take advantage of everything that's there, which is, well, thank you, Rashini. And yeah, so as long as you're participating on Slack, you're welcome to it. We're going to have open rooms. That's a new thing. And if you're a CG Spectrum student, you can participate in open rooms and meet everybody from all walks, all different parts, different departments of CG Spectrum. So be sure and stop in and say hello there. And then we've got the just general animation room. I know at least somebody on the chat boards tonight would love to see other people posting examples of their work on there and share the stuff that they've done. So please feel free to stop by and take advantage of that. But other than that, this is me signing out for another evening. You guys have been great. I will go back to my friend. So my friend, I forgot, what do we call this thing again? I know we used to call it Chloe, but we named it something else tonight. Anyway, we say goodbye. Maybe someday I'll have this character say goodbye. It's coming. Saying goodbye for the evening. Stay safe, stay well. Hope to see you again next time or in the future. And keep working on your animation, keep having fun, and looking forward to seeing your work sometime. And I will just talk to you later. Thanks again for a great stream. Barney, that was it. Thank you. Thanks for reminding me. It said Barney, the purple thing, whatever it is. All right, you guys, take care. Yes, it's my Dorado move. Anyways, take care. You guys know what I'm saying. Take care and have a great week. And I will just see you another time or in another stream. Focus. There are other streams that you can join in too that other people do. But yeah, thanks for joining me in this one. And have a great rest of your day or evening. Good night.